We could also talk about how hot Kyle MacLachlan was in the 90s.
Hey, how hot Kyle MacLachlan is now. He is aging like a fine wine. This time we watched Season 10, Episode 2, Girl in Gold Boots.
The most 60s movie we've seen since Ega. And yes, there is a dune buggy.
But first, a little MST3K news you can use. There's a new MST3K comic book. And essentially, the idea is that they're going to take riffing, as we know it, into the world of comic books by incorporating the characters into like old public domain comics. So you'll suddenly see detective stories and jungle adventures with the heads of Tom Servo and Crow and Gypsy and possibly even Jonah. I don't know. I've only seen one issue.
It looks, well, interesting.
Yeah.
I had a hard time following what was going on because it didn't seem like they were riffing the comic, but the comic was self-aware as they were going through it. Not all the characters knew what was going on too, which is an interesting way of dealing with that. But it took me a while to wrap myself around that concept. But the art's really nice.
Yeah, I really think that the art for, I guess what we'll call the host segments, like the stuff that is on Moon 13 and the Satellite of Love, that was really well done. I especially like the way that the artist for this comic drew Patton Oswalt.
He looks like Frank Conniff. I was confused for a minute.
Oh, I see. Yeah, well, I thought it was a good merging of both of them. Like, as it's fitting that Max is the tribute. He is TV's son of TV's Frank in honor of the real deal.
Beth, when you were reading the comic, did you catch on to how they're indicating the riffs versus the original dialogue in the old comic strip version?
Nope.
There's little circles, there's little bubbles on the speech balloons that indicate that it's a riff or that it's new material. So they're giving new material both to Tom as Detective So-and-so or to the other characters who have not been taken over by the personalities of any of the Satellite of Love crew. But they're giving little circles next to it to indicate this is a joke. This is the new part.
Okay.
It's kind of subtle, and they don't really explain it very well. But it's there if you go back and look at it.
It's a lot of you really have to pay attention to get these riffs. Which, fair enough, you have to do that for MST3K original as well.
Yes, and that's much better than what they did originally, or what they had originally planned. Now, I don't know if you saw this, but the first issue, an early version of it, leaked, and instead of those circles around the new material, there was just an arrow pointing with the text, haha, funny XD. Which I think would have been a huge mistake.
Well, this is the first of many, apparently. They're planning a series, right?
Yeah, this is going to be an ongoing thing, I think. And Dark Horse has certainly been the home of a bunch of movie and TV licenses. Like they put out one of my favorite comics when I was a kid, RoboCop versus Terminator.
Nice.
Yeah, they originated that, which captured my childhood attention when a Terminator, which looked almost identical to Bart Simpson, was getting blown away by RoboCop. So you saw half of this spiky-haired kid's face blown off by a shotgun. Memories.
Well, if you're interested in checking it out, it is free. The first issue is available. We will have a link in our show notes.
Yes, but sadly, RoboCop vs. Terminator is not free. You'll have to pay for it, but it's worth every penny. All right, well, shall we slap on our gold boots and dance to this little film that we watched?
Let's do it.
All right, our experiment this time, Girl in Gold Boots. Michelle's a girl with a dream of go-go dancing, which, prior to the lambada, was the original forbidden dance. Without any connections or money, Michelle's doomed to spend her days working a dead-end job at a diner called Eat with her alcoholic father. Until a magical wish-granting gnome shows up. Oh, hold the phone. That's no gnome. That's Buzz, a traveling man whose face is equal parts Regis Philbin and Baby Herman. Buzz is heading up to California to see his sister Joni, who happens to be a successful go-go dancer. He promises to introduce Michelle to her, though Buzz is really hoping to hook up with Michelle. Anywho, Michelle leaves the world of Eat behind and they head to California. On their way, Buzz and Michelle run afoul of some bikers. The two survive the encounter and gain a friend. A critter has joined your party. And this is the worst on-screen critter this side of Critters 3. This critter is a draft dodger with a song in his heart and an eye for Michelle. After a dune buggy ride, did the driver mention his tires are filled with water? His tires are filled with water. The plucky trio arrives in California at the coolest nightclub in the world, the Haunted House. The house has a goblin maw with glowing red eyes and a smoke machine on the stage. And it's the best. Anyway, the club is run by the sleazy Leo McCabe. Despite McCabe's initially frosty reception, Critter, Buzz, and Michelle all get jobs at the haunted house. They need a new go-go dancer anyway, as Buzz's sister Joni has seen better days. So, Michelle becomes a featured go-go dancer, Critter becomes a janitor, and Buzz works dirty deals for McCabe on the sly. Michelle's on the rise just as Joni's flaming out, lamenting the loss of her pretty mind to drug abuse. Still, something's missing. Perhaps it's not dancing Michelle wants, but love. Michelle, at this point, only has eyes for Critter. Critter tries to take her away from all this as he's wise to McCabe's dealings and Buzz's involvement in them. Buzz and Critter get into a scrap over Michelle, and she makes it clear that Critter's the one for her. In the latest scheme by McCabe, Buzz ends up killing an old man during a skirmish. When Critter and Michelle learn of this, they leave the haunted house and call the police on Buzz, McCabe, and his cronies. Turning their backs on Hollywood, Critter and Michelle frolic on a beach as he sings to her while an unseen harmonica plays on.
And now on to the episode. The show opens with Crow showing his buds his WWBSMD bracelet. What would Buffy St. Marie do? After the commercial break, he's figured it out. Write a folk song. Meanwhile, Pearl is preoccupied with passing her mad scientist board certification, and she's ginned up Castle Forrester to make things look more convincing to the inspector. This includes strapping Bobo to an operating table and shocking him, and making Brain Guy wear a latex hump. In segment 2, Crow attempts to imitate Buzz's tough guy actions in the movie by pouring beer all over Mike's most beloved object. That turns out to be a personalized heirloom beer stein, and then Crow himself. Tom, playing the movie's passive waitress, come go-go dancer Michelle, gasps in mild exclamation throughout. In the third segment, Crow does a sexy striptease for a very enthusiastic Tom, while Mike frets. Tom accuses Mike of being uncomfortable acknowledging Crow as a sexual being, and Crow chimes in, deeming him Mike Taliban Nelson. Sadly, only Crow's legs are visible throughout. Mike takes over for the fourth segment, imitating the moody crooner of the movie by singing a folksy guitar song about how sad he is. The split-screen fadeaways, which in the movie show his beloved Michelle's face, in this case present Crow and Tom warning Mike about an increasingly dangerous fire. In the final segment, everyone in the SOL dresses like Leo, the sleazy club owner from the movie, and it's underwhelming. In the castle, go-go dancing makes its final appearance. Brain Guy's sexy serenade saves Pearl Forrester from failing her certification. As the mad scientist inspector notes, this is decidedly mad.
All right, so we've been watching a lot of, it feels, scantily clad folks in the last little while on It's Just a Show. What with Catalina Caper and Hercules and, you know, the occasional Wizard of the Lost Kingdom wearing less than you would hope. So this feels weirdly thematic. I mentioned last episode that the last time we were in the sci-fi era, we watched 4 in a row, and there seemed to be kind of a steady improvement. And I would say that that's more or less the case here. Of the episodes that we've watched, I'd say this is the best one. I think the sketches are still a little bit on the lousy side, but it's a pretty funny episode. It's got some good riffs. Nothing to write home about, but pretty good.
Yeah, I actually enjoyed this one quite a lot. I enjoyed it all, basically. The riffs were quite good. It has like a darkness and a kind of a bite to it that sometimes goes wrong for me, but in this case I thought was perfectly appropriate for the movie. Especially the jokes about the abusive father. So Michelle's dad slaps her at one point, and it's actually quite horrible. And instead of, like, oftentimes they'll kind of gasp and show, like, this is genuinely upsetting, they kind of lean into it, and they make a joke about how she gets a goodbye slap from her dad before she leaves. I can see that not sitting well with some people, but I kind of appreciated that they're just, like, leaning into the wretchedness even more, and in a way, I find that quite funny. It's an embracing of the darkness that I sometimes appreciate from the Mike era. So I appreciated the darkness of the way they treated this entire rather dark movie. And I actually thought the segments were quite amusing. They were fast, and they were, sometimes they were a little bit sophomoric, but in this case, they were fast enough about it that I was like, okay, I get it. And I thought none of the segments overstayed their welcome, and they got their point across. This is a good episode. And I wonder how much that has to do with the fact that the Sci-Fi Channel at this point had basically just given up on the show.
Yeah, more or less. There is one last little thing that they insisted on, and it comes courtesy of Paul Chaplin, who wrote about it on the Sci-Fi Channel's equivalent of the Amazing Colossal Episode Guide. And I quote, "The whole mad scientist accreditation subplot has an interesting history. Our overseers at Sci-Fi, both of whom are long gone, fooled themselves into thinking that if we were somehow able to build an overarching plot into our show, people would start watching it. We didn't like that idea, since the new shows are usually presented several weeks apart and then never again shown in order, and we seem to write better when we don't have to pay any attention to stuff like plot. But we had to do it. It seems sort of sad, really, because by this time, we were already pretty sure we were writing the last season."
Right. And I'd say, like season 7, there's a certain kind of devil may care feel to everything. Like, I think this crew reacts well to imminent disappointment, and it gives them a really don't give a fuck approach to what they're doing, which I tend to like.
I don't know. I very much get that from season 7. I don't really get that here. Like, I was not crazy about the bracelet sketches, the what would Buffy St. Marie, etc. do stuff at the beginning. There's the stuff where they're just dressed like the like McCabe from the movie, and McCabe's almost identical looking henchman. There's I think the sketch, like, I don't know. I can't go to bat for these sketches, and I think the mad scientist thing is really off and a bad use of Mary Jo.
On the other hand, I thought the final segment gave me a new appreciation for Bill Corbett, and I did find his final, like, genuine enjoyment of the dance he was doing to be quite heartening.
Yes, I did enjoy Bill Corbett's moment there, and that brings me to another comment that was made after this episode aired from Bill Corbett for a more recent intro to this episode. Had said two things in apology. One, and I quote, "We were calling the gangsters in this film the Armenian gangsters, which was probably fairly racist. Sorry about that."
True enough.
And then secondly, in referring to that final sketch, described it as the most hideous moment on cable TV. And again, apologized for it.
Well, I don't know. That feels a little bit... like, is it just hideous because a dude is doing it?
He did not elaborate.
Yeah, I think that was, like, the one kind of false note in that. It's like it's, a no homo moment there. But the fact that he seemed to be enjoying himself kind of saved it for me.
The funniest moments for me were riffing on the bad print that they had of this movie, such as when Buzz suddenly appears because, like, at least, to a minute of footage is missing, and the comment is, "Anyone notice how I just appeared just now?"
Like, perfect timing. He just slaps back in, and one of them's like, "I'm back."
And I do, while I'm not always crazy about MST3K harping on the appearance of actors, I will say I do think this was done right in that, Buzz is a really unusual looking guy, especially because they keep referring to him as, like, kind of a youngish man, but he was 35 at the time they filmed it, but he looks 10 times older.
Yeah, like, it's just one of the most egregious examples of getting an older actor to play a younger person, because he does not... There's nothing youthful about him whatsoever.
No, he is the face of an evil doll.
Yeah, and he looks a lot like Regis Philbin, which does not help things.
Not a face you could trust.
You don't trust Regis Philbin?
No. I mean, my God, he's a real friend, Beth. If they had millions of dollars that I could have, they would just give it to me. They would not put me through the gauntlet and force me to answer a bunch of riddles for it.
I would have been terrible at that game.
I, too, would not have been good. Norm Macdonald fared a lot better than I ever would have.
Just didn't have enough friends to call.
Well, you could always call your dad. You could call a family member.
So the director, Ted V. Michaels, has actually a long and storied career, and some of his films look really interesting from their titles anyway. And as soon as I read through his filmography, I'm like, I bet Adam's seen some of these movies.
You would be correct. He's made, just want to list off a few of the amazing titles that we have here. Dr. Sex.
Yep.
The Black Klansman, not to be confused with the current Black Klansman.
Indeed.
The Astro Zombies. 10 Violent Women. Spooky World. Corpse Grinders 2. And his last film, Paranormal Extremes, Text Messages from the Dead. Made in 2015.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I've seen a few of these movies, and I really want to see more, just because everything I've seen has been a very different experience. Like, Girl in Gold Boots is not a great movie, but it's not a bad movie. And it's not the worst movie I've ever seen. Mm-hmm. I would not call it a good movie, but I've seen way worse. I've seen worse on this show. I've seen worse in real life.
Right.
And, I think it's passable and has like a lot of moments of personality to it, that are kind of like interesting enough. So it's not totally forgettable, which is, I think, perhaps the greatest sin of any movie, to be forgettable and boring. It's all right. By contrast, his worst movie that I've seen is something called Astro Zombies. But I will say, his best movie of all time. Is it Blood Orgy of the She-Devils? No. Is it The Doll Squad? No. Is it Mission Kill Fast? No. Is it Apartheid Slave Women's Justice? Heavens no. It's a little movie called The Corpse Grinders.
That is his most well-known ones, according to what I've seen.
While you were looking up on old TV Michaels, were you by any chance given a plot summary or saw anything from The Corpse Grinders?
No, I only read that he actually had a corpse grinding machine put out in front of some theater showings.
Yeah, he definitely used some William Castle-esque marketing tactics. One of them was that in order to see The Corpse Grinders, you had to sign a certificate at certain participating theaters that you were of sound mind and body. God. Before you were allowed to see the movie. The Corpse Grinders, my dear Beth, is a delight. And is fun for the whole family.
Oh, okay.
It is the story of a cat food company that runs out of meat and pilfers the cemetery, grinds up corpses.
As you do.
Every cat in the city develops a taste for human flesh after eating corpse meat. So it's actually a movie about cats gone wild.
Even better.
So you start off with one very different kind of movie before settling in with hopeless dopes that Michael's recruited off the street, wrestling with domestic cats going, no, please no, before awkwardly cutting away to a bloody mess. It has to be seen. It's really fun. And I will say this, like, Michael's really varies as a director. Sometimes you could see talent, and a lot of the time it's just a matter of like, we've got to shoot this quickly because we have no money. The corpse grinding machine that he made cost $17.
Wow.
But he lights it super well. He's got all this weird Mario Bava lighting where it's all red and green. So it looks amazing.
Oh.
Yeah, it's his most stylish movie. It's his most outlandish movie. And the more there's a bunch that I have not seen, especially his newer ones, but I'm curious. And then on top of that, on top of his professional achievements, I was also kind of drawn in by who he was as a guy. But before we get into his personal life, two interesting credits. One, of course, Ted Michaels is the credited cinematographer for Catalina Caper. Which we just talked about.
Beautiful, yeah.
Yeah. And he did a good job with that.
He did.
Yeah, we watched a very muddy print, but, you could kind of tell what the movie could have looked like or should have looked like.
Exactly.
I don't think anyone's ponying up the money for a remastered Catalina Caper. But also, apparently, and this is just from the IMDb, he's the cinematographer of an episode riffed in season 8 of a TV movie, a series of kind of like TV episodes or a failed pilot or something like that became a standalone movie called Agent for Harm. and he's the uncredited cinematographer on that. So he has a tie to this series.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I did not know that. But let me tell you about Ted V. Michaels, the man.
All right.
Yes, this is the Ted V. Michaels lifestyle. He lived in a castle in Glendale.
Okay.
And he'd done that since, I think it goes all the way back to the 60s. I could be wrong. But he had been there for quite a while. And he had said that, at different points, sometimes there were as many as 60 women living with him. And until recently, until he had, or at least in the 1990s, I'd seen that he had settled down and become a one-woman man. But prior to that, he'd said that there had never been anything less than 7 of what he called castle ladies with him at any given time.
One of the things that I have enjoyed most in terms of Schadenfreude is just how sad and pathetic the Playboy Mansion became in its last few years. Mm-hmm. So I'm always kind of looking askance at anybody who houses women in a giant compound.
Yeah. His thing with his ladies was this. He always talked about how he wanted to, put as many women on the screen as possible and make them leads in his movies. And you sort of see that not so much in the earliest stuff, like in the Corpse Grinders, for instance, like the 2 leads are male. But he really felt that women weren't taken seriously enough in movies.
Okay.
So wanted them to have stronger roles, hence 10 violent women.
Mm-hmm.
But also, it's, in some cases, it was an excuse or a reason to give the people who lived with him work. Like the aforementioned 10 violent women, the screenplay came about. It's like, how can all of us do a movie together? I gotcha. All 10 of you will be violent women.
All right.
And as he's discussed it too, I think he might be a little bit different from Hugh Hefner in that in interviews that I've read or listened to or watched with Ted V. Michaels, is that he's often addressed that, one of the reasons why he wants to have women around is he wants to have a bunch of strong women because he wants to be dominated by those women.
Okay. Well, I knew it was a sex thing, obviously.
Yeah, but he's not dominating these ladies. He's being dominated, Beth.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one who's not in charge.
Sure. So, how is this guy any different from Corey Feldman, besides the fact that he can actually direct a little bit?
There's that. There's the fact that the Corpse Grinders is totally fun and Corey Feldman's music totally sucks. And there's something really depressing about the Corey's Angels. I don't know. The sense that I got from Michaels, and this seemed to come through interviewers who really seemed to take a liking to him. Now, it's possible that, maybe Michaels is creepy and he's just really charismatic and likable. That would work for any con artist. But one of the things that was noted was he and Leslie McRae got along. And one of the reasons they got along is that McRae said that while she was working as an actor, Michaels was the only filmmaker who, didn't try to pull a casting couch on her, despite his bevy of women at all times.
No, I mean, I don't. I'm kind of giving him a hard time, but he actually, from everything I've read, seems like a pretty likable guy.
Mm-hmm.
Although he does have the pretension of thinking that his movies are not schlock.
Yeah, and he only made one great movie, The Corpse Grinders. But Ted V. Michaels is not the only notable figure in this movie, Beth.
And we have a few quick hits about the various people who are in this film. You want to start?
Okay, sure.
Just pick one at random.
I will indeed. So, I guess the person with the least amount of screen time is bass player Donald Duck Dunn.
Love it.
Are you familiar at all with that name?
No, I haven't heard of him at all. But after the movie I checked out, he's apparently a bass player for the house band in this movie. But he's also well known as being a very good bass player.
Yes, he's worked with Elvis Presley, Joan Baez, Otis Redding, Muddy Waters, Isaac Hayes, Bill Withers, a bunch of really interesting and varied artists. But the best thing, the thing I know him best from is, one, he is a member of the Blues Brothers band.
Right.
But more importantly, he worked with John Carpenter to form the band the Texas Toad Lickers when John Carpenter decided to form a rock band to score his movie Vampires with James Woods. Donald Duck Dunn.
Other famous musician is Preston Epps, who is the bongo rock man. He plays the bongos here. He seems to be having a good time in this movie.
My favorite part of reading up about Preston Epps, because he's credited as though he's a big deal, because in the movie he's credited as that bongo rock man.
Yeah.
And I looked him up because I had never heard of him before, and just reading the Wikipedia entry, which is that he followed up. He had a hit in 1959 with Bongo Rock. And he followed that up with Bongo Bongo Bongo, and both of those singles are in the Billboard Top 100. The world was not ready for the following singles: Bongo in the Congo, Bongo Rocket, Mr. Bongo, Bootlace Bongo, Flamenco Bongo, and Bongo Boogie.
Now, this is not as ridiculous as one would think, because in the 50s, they loved...
bongos.
They did love bongos, and they loved novelty music. So to some extent, like, you can see somebody just having a shtick and running it into the sunset. We also have Mark Herron, who plays the club owner / drug pusher Leo, who was the fourth and final husband of Judy Garland.
Oh, final husband, eh? So that must mean they had a very happy, smooth relationship that lasted many years.
No, it lasted about 6 months, and there was... I don't even want to say allegations of abuse, because she said that he hit her, and he's like, "Yep, I did," but it was self-defense.
Oh, well, that makes sense. Judy Garland on a rampage over there.
Interestingly enough, one of the legends of Judy Garland is that she was the progenitor of the friend of Dorothy, so she had a really close relationship with gay men, and 2 of her 4 husbands are considered to be gay, and this is one of them. He had a long-standing relationship with another actor that he, I guess, put on hold for this marriage, and then went back to him for the remainder of his life. And where is his name? Hold on. I don't want to not give him credit. Henry Brandon. So that was who he was with until his death, basically. He mostly moved to like theater performances and summer stock stuff. He didn't have a lot of TV appearances after this, but his final appearance was on the Bill Cosby Show.
Oh, good. Great. Wow. Well, that
Yeah.
I have a sour note now.
Well, let's move on to the ladies then.
Yay! There won't be any sad endings there.
Of course not. There's Leslie McRae, who's our lead lady. She actually has a fairly good story, I guess. She continued acting for the next 10 years or so after this movie, but then she moved into producing.
Yeah, and
kind of.
Watching this stuff really makes me appreciate the later direct-to-video shot-on-video efforts of Ted V. Michaels. Because watching the documentary, quote-unquote, that she made called Real Celebrity Miracles...
You watched it? You found it?
It's on YouTube.
So you watched it. Please do tell.
Well,
how was it?
I watched as much as I could stomach. It's like watching a Tim and Eric sketch without jokes. It is very, very haphazardly produced and very cheap looking. And the special has something to do with 9/11. And I looked it up. And then, like, even on the cover of Real Celebrity Miracles, which was released on home video in some format, it is a picture of the 2 towers going down.
God.
Yeah. At least that's what I saw on IMDb.
But it came out in like 2015, didn't it?
What a miracle. I mean, there's still money to be made in tragedy.
And then there's Barry Burns, who plays Joni. She has a different story, but one I kind of respect more than Leslie's, I gotta say.
Okay. Do tell.
First of all, Misty's might recognize her. She has a very small part. I don't even know she has a speaking role, but she's in Girlstown as one of the denizens of Girlstown named Dolores. She ended up being featured in a very short documentary called A Bittersweet Tale of a Hollywood Failure, which she basically talks about how her career got derailed in the 60s and 70s. It sounds like there was a lot of exploitation going on, but she takes it in stride. In fact, she ends up writing her memoir, F***ing with the Stars, A Bittersweet Tale of the Hollywood Failure. Available as an ebook in case you're interested.
Oh, excellent. Yes. The only thing that I had known her from is that she has a small role as a singer in Johnny Staccato, which is an early John Cassavetes film.
Okay.
So, that's something. Working with Cassavetes, that's cool. But other than that, it was just this. I had no idea until now that she has this amazing memoir, apparently. Do we get any kind of sense of like her perspective on her life?
I get the sense that she just, she had to spend a lot of time on casting couches to get anything done, but she's very tongue in cheek about it, if I can say that. And she seems to have some pretty good humor about what she had to deal with. So I saw a bit of the documentary, and it shows clips from her various movies, and she has a presence, and she narrates, and she's a good narrator. So one of the best lines, she actually talks about Girl in Gold Boots in the documentary, and she mentions that every day he, meaning Mark Herron, supplies the hooch, and I supply the hash.
Interesting. I remember Ted V. Michaels was going on about how, he doesn't allow for that sort of thing on his set.
This was clandestine.
Ooh, that's what makes it all the more appealing. And I guess lastly, there is Victor Izay, who plays Michelle's dad very early in the movie and is forgotten.
He's very convincing in it.
Yes, and he is probably the actor with like the longest career here. Like he's been in Billy Jack, Young Guns, several Ted V. Michaels movies.
Yeah, okay.
And he was on pretty much anything in the 60s and 70s, like Mannix, Columbo, The Waltons, T.J. Hooker, and yes, something called The Lloyd Bridges Show. Because apparently Lloyd Bridges had a show, presumably because Lloyd's lungs were aching for airtime. I know for a fact that you are more than just someone who is acquainted with go-go dancing. You're someone who studied go-go dancing. You're someone who knows it. It's like a religion to you, is it not? It's in your bones, in your blood.
Oh yeah, no, that's that. I live and breathe this stuff. No, I should have been a dancer apparently, but I never was. But I do find the history of go-go dancing interesting, because it's basically in a moment when the idea of dance really started to change, right?
Well, I'm curious, like watching this movie and other go-go themed things, I've come to one conclusion. I still don't know what go-go dancing is.
All right. I'll see what I can do. So go-go, when you see something like monster a go-go, for instance, that's a French expression. A go-go means in abundance or galore. It's derived from the ancient French word le gogue, which means joy and happiness. So that is where the go-go comes from. It doesn't mean like go, go, go. But you have to understand that go-go dancing is coming out of basically what rock and roll had changed about dancing. Before rock and roll, dancing was all very like choreographed. You had waltzes, like you learned steps and how to move and certain sequences you had to follow. And rock and roll comes along, and because of how fast it is and its energy, people are moving frenetically and without any kind of preconceived plan anymore. And for people who had been like trained to dance, like in the waltz or anything like that, or even like the conga, or like it was very weird to adjust to, right? But it was also very exciting to see people just kind of come up with their own moves and move in a way that you couldn't predict. And that's where go-go dancing comes from, basically. So you have all this new rock music and people want to move to it and they're not quite sure what to do with it. And then basically go-go dancing comes out of Whiskey a Go-Go. You know what that is?
No.
Okay, so Whiskey a Go-Go, there's a lot of clubs in LA at the time, of which the Haunted House was one of them. And it was one of the first places that had dancers to dance along with the music, basically like cheerleaders, to try and get people riled up and get them dancing, even if they feel a little bit weird about dancing to this music that doesn't have like a preconceived set of steps that you have to follow to dance to it. So they were the first people to suspend women in cages dancing along to the music. And that's basically where you get the go-go dancers. But it's funny because it's not really a dance. It's more of like a context and a fashion situation. Go-go dancers are people who are meant to kind of rile up the crowd and get them interested in what's going on with the music. But it's also very much a fashion statement. In the 60s, it was associated with that very 60s look of like a mini skirt and tall boots.
Yeah.
So basically, I mean, you can see you have a bunch of pretty girls dancing around and having fun. It's funny how this became kind of the way to bring people into pop culture going forward with Soul Train and... Now, this is something maybe only Canadians know, but do you remember that show on Much Music?
Electric Circus?
Yes.
Of course I do. It's a part of my heritage.
So for people not in the know, Electric Circus was basically kind of a Soul Train-y kind of American bandstand.
But very white.
Yeah.
Very, very, very white. Like, I mean, you had people, I mean, the Soul Train was predominantly black, but you had people of all races coming together to dance to cool 70s music and terrible music for the 90s Soul Train revival, which was awful. But Electric Circus, I don't think people got darker than I'm from Etobicoke.
Yeah, it was actually like one of our goals when I was a teenager to try to get on to. Well, not my friend group really wanted to get on an Electric Circus. I was just like, no, thank you. No, I didn't want to do it. I knew that wasn't going to go well.
Or perhaps they were hoping to have a chance encounter with Ed the Sock.
Yeah.
Or Phil the Temp.
It was Rick the Temp.
Whatever. PJ Fresh, Phil, Rick the Temp. They're the same guy.
This is all Much Music stuff, guys. This is the Canadian ripoff of MTV.
Indeed. And also for our Canadian listeners, yes, I'm aware that Rick the Temp and PJ Fresh, Phil are not the same guy.
So unfortunately, I wasn't able to find as much information about it, but there were also male go-go dancers. Boy go-go dancers were a major part of basically the kind of post-Stonewall gay club scene, and unlike go-go dancing, they never really fell out of fashion. They are still very much a thing.
So wait, you could see men in cages anywhere, anytime?
Ah, isn't it wonderful?
Wow, what an age to be alive. All right, so one thing we have not talked about enough with this very special episode is the goddamn haunted house.
Yes. I would actually say the venue of this movie is the most interesting thing about it.
Oh, easily. I think the haunted house steals the whole show.
Yeah, I'd say so too.
Yeah, in fact, it led to one of the best riffs in the episode, which is let's celebrate Christmas at the haunted house.
It's a little weird because even though this venue is haunted house themed, nothing that they do with it is very haunted.
No, at no point does Mr. McCabe or Mrs. Miller, whatever his henchman's name is, turn out to be a vampire or a werewolf or a Critters 2. Like, at no point is there a monster involved, which is very misleading.
So this was actually a real place.
I was shocked. Like, I just kind of assumed, I don't know why, because this is a low-budget movie, but I just kind of assumed that it was invented for the movie. And that perhaps it was kind of cobbled together from funhouse attractions. But this was a real place in the 1960s.
On Hollywood Boulevard, no less.
Yeah. And this was a cool venue, and it was used in both this movie as well as a film called It's a Bikini Summer that featured...
No, It's a Bikini World.
Oh, I'm sorry. Bikinis...
It went bigger than that.
Yeah. Bikinis last all summer long. It was the Brian Aldiss bikini books. But it's amazing to see it because, like I said, I thought it was something from another movie, and you're getting performances from the animals and the toys, and it looks amazing. Like, it's this giant, to describe it for people who haven't seen it, there's this giant gaping goblin head that's on the stage and bulging glowing eyes, and it has smoke, for fog, I should say, from a fog machine coming out of its mouth in all the footage that I have seen. It takes up most of the stage. It must have been terrible to perform on.
And unlike in this movie where the women are tragically unmatched with the theme, most of the time they had Batgirl go-go dancers, and just generally they had a horror movie motif, which would have been amazing.
Yes, as far as I can tell, like it seemed to be really popular. In Frank Zappa's Freak Map for the album Freak Out, the haunted house is described as full of go-go and snappy ensembles and hairdos and a genuine fire-breathing bandstand, which makes it sound amazing. But yeah, the decor, which we get a better look at in something that'll definitely be linked in our show notes. There's a video of Sonny and Cher visiting the haunted house.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I assume they had to spend the night there in order to get the inheritance from a rich uncle. Played by Ted B. Michaels.
And interestingly, the haunted house eventually turned into Cave Theater, which was XXX adult theater for the 70s and 80s.
It's not a subtle name. Yes, and then as I look it up, it became the Hollywood Cabaret, which became live adult performances. And now it is the Deja Vu Showgirl Strip Club, which is such a shame. The haunted house should still exist. From what I saw in the footage with Sonny and Cher and what I read up about on the haunted house is that there were statues of Dracula and the Frankenstein monster and the creature from the Black Lagoon, and they were all hidden behind cobwebs and spider webs.
Oh, that sounds so fun.
As you come in, yeah, watch the footage of them walking through the haunted house. It is amazing. If this place did not already exist in history, it is something that I would have invented. This is the exact kind of music club I would want to go to.
I feel like at this point we should have a show note link to the picture of you at the Niagara Falls Haunted House.
Yes, from the bonus zone for patrons, in which I spent the night in 4 consecutive haunted houses. But like this is exactly what I would want. All that is missing is that for one of the cobwebbed, spiderweb, cubbyhole areas, to have perhaps a chained up Donald Pleasant statue. That's the only thing that it's missing. Otherwise, it's perfect.
Hey everybody, it's time for the Shallow 13.
It's time once again for the Shallow 13. 13 facts that'll get you moving and grooving. Oh yes, about Girl in Gold Boots. Go, Beth, go!
In one segment, Mike Nelson stands beneath a porthole looking out to the vast emptiness of space, strumming a guitar and singing a dirge called Oh, I Am Sad.
Your limbs are slender, your eyes are blue.
As with all Season 10 songs, it's never been released outside of the episode. The original Clowns in the Sky soundtracks only featured songs from Seasons 2 to 9. The soundtrack for Season 11 limits itself to, well, Season 11.
Brain Guy pushes the reels of today's experiment towards the camera, imitating the 3D effects of the Dr. Tongue and Woody Tobias Jr. sketches from SCTV. But that's not the only SCTV nod in this episode.
Indeed, Mike name-checks Ed Grimley during the opening dance.
Ed Grimley choreographed this dance.
Grimley was a Martin Short character popularized on the show before making his way to SNL, and his own Saturday morning cartoon, The Completely Mental Misadventures of Ed Grimley.
As the house band climbs on stage, Tom notes,
"It's the Tab Hunters."
Tab Hunter became prominent in the mid-50s as an actor with wholesome, all-American good looks and charm. He was the kind of boy that women swooned for. But as detailed in his autobiography turned biopic, Tab Hunter Confidential, he was secretly gay. J.J. Abrams is working on a movie about his relationship with a pre-psycho Anthony Perkins.
For all you youngins out there, the joke about Michelle dancing like Elaine Bennis refers to a legendary 1996 episode of Seinfeld called The Little Kicks. Her friend, George Costanza, describes her dance as a full-body dry heave set to music.
According to Spike Fairston, in an interview in Yahoo News, Elaine's dance was inspired by none other than Lorne Michaels. Fairston allegedly spotted that Saturday Night Live creator dancing late at night in his office as if he'd never seen another human dance before while working as a receptionist at NBC.
As Buzz pours beer over a motorcycle, Crow jokes,
The bikers are still inside flipping through Tikkun.
Tikkun is a quarterly magazine that was created in 1986 to give an outlet for Jewish leftist intellectuals and others, including the philosopher and public intellectual Cornel West.
At the bongo party, Leo gets Michelle to take another puff of marijuana in a scene that was censored in Sci-Fi Channel reruns. Crow jokes.
I think this is Dan Rowan's life story.
Dan Rowan was, of course, one of the hosts of Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In, a comedy show which premiered in 1968, shortly before this film was made. The show featured rapid-fire jokes and lots of female go-go dancers in bikinis, with flowers and jokes painted on them.
Hey, there's a pointless dune buggy scene in this movie. This one features a yellow Jigger. The Jigger, which is now considered the first production all-terrain vehicle, was made right here in Ontario. We'll have links in the show notes if you want to learn more, or check out It's Just a Show, episode 11 on EGA for more dune buggy action.
Girl in Gold Boots was made on a paltry $6,800 budget, but it still lost money. Why? Depends on who you ask. Some say the film is terrible. Director Ted V. Michaels puts it down to the film lacking nudity or much titillating violence. Another possible culprit was Boots' box office competition, an obscure little movie called Planet of the Apes.
The press pack for the film suggests that Michaels had ambitious plans, though. One merchandising tie-in that was planned, custom gold boots. Michaels and company struck a deal with the Nita Footwear Company for a prize giveaway of a pair of gold boots valued at $50. Sadly, the boots were never made.
The release of a soundtrack LP was promised in early promotions for Girl in Gold Boots. Despite containing 14 songs, 7 of which were specifically written for the film, plans for the soundtrack were scrapped when Boots bombed. A shame, as the Third World's Do You Want to Laugh or Cry is a real jam.
Changing things, wonder why the same words don't fit now.
Nevertheless, a devoted fan of MST3K and this film, Jeremy Allison, has assembled a version of the soundtrack, which you can download at his website. If you're into this kind of late 60s Nuggets type music at all, it's worth checking out. Link in the show notes.
And that's time. So, today's movie is very much the PG version of Showgirls.
It's certainly a trope that we see an awful lot in Hollywood movies. It was actually funny how much this movie reminded me of the B plot of one of my favorite Misties, Sinister Urge.
Ooh, okay. It's been a while since I've seen that one.
Oh, it's so good. But it has a B plot of basically, a naive, young girl who has big dreams of becoming an actress or a dancer and basically gets chewed up and swallowed out by ne'er-do-well men who just want her for her body. This trope is so popular because, especially during, the mid-century, because it's basically a distillation of anxieties around women's freedom, right? That these were women who weren't being controlled by the patriarchy, and so they're basically spinning out these tales where these unsupervised women get themselves in real trouble because there's a lot of bad guys out of there, and just basically punishes them for, their ambitions.
Yeah, like what I think of when I think of this particular trope or this particular story is, have you ever heard of The Lonely Lady?
You might have to explain that more to me.
Okay, The Lonely Lady, well, I know it's based on a novel, but I haven't read that. But I did watch the Pia Zadora movie, The Lonely Lady.
Oh, Misty favorite, Pia Zadora.
Indeed, of Santa Claus Conquers the Martians fame. And also, I'd say 20% of TV's Frank references are Pia Zadora references.
Yeah. And as Tom Servo points out at one point, she was in a John Waters film. So, respect.
Yeah, there's definitely... You know what? I would just give respect for Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. She's great in that. Scene stealer. But yeah, that's essentially this exact same thing. It's a story of an aspiring screenwriter who basically gets used and abused and is totally chewed up by the end of the movie.
It's funny because we were trying to brainstorm other examples of this. Obviously, Showgirls came up, but earlier versions. It's interesting because have you seen All About Eve?
A long, long time ago.
Well, what's interesting about that movie is it kind of takes that premise and flips it on its head, where it's the seeming innocent, naive ingenue who's actually the meddling evil who pretends to be that role and basically takes down everybody in Hollywood as a result, and basically makes goofballs out of all of the established Hollywood set. who is Betty Davis, for instance. And something similar, I haven't seen A Star is Born, but I mean, that is essentially a success story where a young ingenue makes good and ends up linking with somebody who wants to help her along, but is also attracted to her. And she ends up moving beyond him and becoming a success where he gets left behind. So yeah, I think probably this trope is much more compelling when people don't go with the obvious ending where the ingenue gets grinded into the mud for daring to follow her dreams.
Well, you say that, but the best example of this trope is clearly Showgirls. That's the greatest movie made out of this.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know where to begin with Showgirls. It's kind of a masterpiece.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect storm of a very smart director and a very stupid screenwriter.
Exactly. But I think that too is kind of it works because it takes the trope on its head. Like, to some extent, Verhoeven has always been interested in like the kind of the lie of the American dream and how in order to not be defeated by assholes, you become an asshole yourself. But what happens with so much of this trope is like you try to make it in Hollywood and Hollywood destroys you. But what Showgirls is very interesting is like Nomi Malone has done this before and she will do it again because America is very big and there's many places she can go. And that's basically what happens. It doesn't work out in, I even forget where she is. It's either Las Vegas or Los Angeles, but it doesn't work out. So she just moves on to the next place.
Yeah, she's in Vegas at the most of the movie.
Okay. So she just moves on when it doesn't work out. And I think that kind of built-in resilience of her dream is actually kind of a defiance of this idea that she would be automatically destroyed by things not going well, you know?
And, you know, you get the sense that she is doomed to repeat her mistakes, as there is not one but two scenes, crucial character scenes, in which Nomi tosses down a basket full of French fries and the fries go everywhere. Just to let you know that things repeat themselves. What a compelling movie that Showgirls.
It's so... Well, it's just because it's filmed so beautifully, but at the same time, like its beauty is focused on things that are so tawdry and tacky, you know? It has so many more levels than what it seems to at first. I really enjoy that movie a lot. So, when this film gets compared to Showgirls, it should take that as a compliment because that is a good movie.
Yes.
So, Adam.
Yes.
I know you weren't too impressed by the first segment in this episode where they make a joke about what would Jesus do, but they make what would Buffy St. Marie do, which is an interesting setup, and they do nothing with it.
No. I mean, Crow at the very end sings a song that is one of hers, and that's it. They quickly move on to the next thing just to make a joke about acronyms.
Which is too bad, because if you're going to bring up Buffy St. Marie, there are so many interesting things to bring up about her.
I was excited to talk about this, and then I realized I was thinking of Lorena McKenna, and now I realize I know nothing about Buffy St. Marie.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's interesting that they mention Buffy St. Marie because this is very much a movie that sort of has a preoccupation with folk music. Because she came out with a kind of the folk explosion that you had in the 60s with Joni Mitchell and Neil Young and all of those people, Janis Joplin. And she was, she was a protest singer. A lot of her songs had to do with Native issues. And she has a story, a really good song called Codeine about her addiction to opiates for a while. And what's interesting about her is unlike a lot of her compatriots, like she never really hit it big, and as a result, she never got comfortable. So she never lost those kind of activist roots. And she attributes that to the fact that she believes she was specifically targeted by the US government, and Lyndon B. Johnson basically blacklisted her from being played on US radio.
Whoa.
And frankly, given what the FBI and people were doing in the 60s and 70s, I kind of believe her. I think it's probably exactly what happened to her. Anyway, so she kind of went underground for a bit, but she is somewhat well known for the hit song "Up Where We Belong," which she co-wrote, but ended up being performed by Joe Cocker and Jennifer Warnes.
Oh, yeah, is that Love Lift Us Up Where We Belong? Love lift us up where we belong.
Yep, that's
where
the one.
Eagles dare.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
So she wrote that.
What do I know that from? that sounds that it's not Top Gun, but that was featured in a movie.
Yeah, it was in An Officer and a Gentleman.
Oh,
which has that big sequence that I think the Simpsons.
Yeah, in the first season, where he's
Yeah.
lifting up Marge. Yeah, I know that sequence, but I don't know that. I've never seen that movie.
Yeah. Well, she did a stint on Sesame Street for a while.
Oh, really?
Yeah. She wasn't planning on doing it, and then she asked them if they had ever done any Native American programming, and they were like, no. But basically, her big agenda was like to prove to people, like, hi, Native Americans still exist. This is the same time where you have the song, is it called Cherokee People?
Oh, God, how does that go?
I'm doing the lyrics from memory. Cherokee people, Cherokee pride, so proud to live, so proud to die. Which is basically just romanticizing the idea of natives as being extinct. Which she was like, you'd like to think that, but we're still here. So that was one of her big agendas, was like, no, we're still here, and we demand recognition. And that is possibly why she got blacklisted.
Plus, it's very convenient to just kind of say, any kind of conflict with Native Americans, that's all in the past and has been dealt with now.
She's also, one of her most favorite scenes on Sesame Street was where she breastfeeds her kid, which apparently had never been done on TV before that. And Big Bird watches her and says, that's nice.
I like the part where Big Bird says that's nice. I don't like the idea of Big Bird just watching her.
Yeah, he watches.
Ugh,
it's very sweet. I assure you, it's extremely sweet.
I don't know about that.
Link in the show notes so you can decide for yourselves. So she's the real thing. She's been an activist since the 60s, and she never lost her way. And I think that in itself is extremely admirable.
She didn't have a yuppie face.
Yeah, no, exactly. And it's a little disappointing that if you're going to bring up Buffy St. Marie, just like she's a folk singer. That's all you do with it, guys? Come on. All right, well, that wraps up the sleaze for one night, I think. Do you have any more final factoids for us, Chris?
I do. So there's a moment early on in the movie when we are looking at the motorcyclists, and Mike says,
I feel exhilarated. Let's get a pony keg and head to Sturgis.
Yeah, what was that?
Yeah, what was that? That is what I'm leading to.
Are they going to Preston Sturgis' house?
Close. They're going to the Sturgis Motorcycle Rally in Sturgis, South Dakota. That is the joke. It's a motorcycle rally that happens for about a week in August. So I guess we missed the 2018 version of it. It was begun in 1938 by a group of Indian motorcycle riders in South Dakota, but that doesn't mean that they were Native American motorcycle riders. Indian was the brand.
Oh.
If you've been affected by the issues on this show, if you've got any hip go-go moves to share, or if you'd like to ask Beth and Adam anything, get in touch with us. Our website is itsjustashow.com, or we're on Twitter at itisjustashow. We'd love to hear from you. It's Just a Show is a podcast from Megaphonic FM. Find all our fancy little shows over at Megaphonic FM. And thanks again to all our Patreon supporters. You can support It's Just a Show and access some superfan bonus bits with lots of extra juicy details about the movie, or sometimes just us talking about stuff, by going to itsjustashow.com/Patreon or patreon.com/itsjustashow. And if you want to follow up on anything that was mentioned today on It's Just a Show, you'll find links in our show notes at itsjustashow.com/episode/35.
Well, I think after this episode, we want our pretty minds back. Chris, what do we have coming up on our next episode?
Well, Adam, Beth, I hope you are all ready, because there's only a few more shopping days until the biggest holiday of the year, the day that all good children wait impatiently for, the day when the lovingest lovers propose eternal love to each other, the day we sing our heartiest songs about, the 5th of October, the birthday of Donald Pleasance, which we will once again be celebrating by watching Season 9, Episode 3, Puma Man.
Woo! All right. I am always happy to celebrate Donald Pleasance Day.
Wait, Donald Pleasance is in this movie?
Oh, yes. Yes, he is the stealer of scenes, as always. And he's also the bad guy, again.
Well, I know this is a fan favorite, so I don't think I've seen it before. So I
Oh,
will,
really?
Yeah, no, I know the riff, he flies like a moron riff, but I haven't really engaged with it beyond that. So we'll see if I like it.
All right. Well, as you're all getting ready for that big holiday, until next time.
It's great to gyrate, but I cry when we say bye.
Really, we should all just go watch Showgirls again.
Indeed. Until next time, take it away, Theme Squad.
Love,
Us up where we belong.